Hi guys, it's Joseph. Usually my videos are very well thought out. I got a bunch of bullet points and all that, but today I just want to go on a rant, and whatever comes to my mind, I'm going to say it. And today's topic is how the brain uses your fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities against you to grab your attention and to create symptoms that will purposely grab your attention more than other ones would. So when I first started reading TMS books, I started off with Dr. Sarno's Divided Mind and Steve Ozanich's Great Pain Deception. And one thing that stuck out to me was how they both mentioned and observed that the brain will specifically choose symptoms that are related to fears, vulnerabilities, or values that you have. And it would use values against you because whatever you love, usually there's also a fear to lose that thing. So it'll use the things you love and the things you hate to grab your attention. And some examples they gave were like past injuries. So maybe you were injured somewhere on your foot, and then when your brain wants to create a symptom, it goes to that so that it could grab your attention. It's convincing, right? Dr. Dan Ratner talks about how symptoms, usually the brain's goal when it creates a symptom is for it to be plausible and convincing. So an old injury is plausible and convincing because we have a lot of mainstream information out there saying that when you have an injury that you don't recover all the way, or that you're prone to pain later on and things like that. So the brain will use these things. I've also seen people who have been physically abused in the past. The brain will go back to those areas of abuse, specific parts of the body that are related to that past pain to grab the person's attention. Another thing that comes to my mind is one of Sigmund Freud's cases. I forgot how I even came across this, but a man who was sexually abused lost the function of his body from the waist down. So he became actually paralyzed from the waist down after becoming sexually abused. You know, we see clear correlation with these things. Now, not all symptoms, not all fears are going to be related to past fears or current vulnerabilities that are in your psyche. Sometimes they are just really random. And you know what? I do want to put a disclaimer out here. Like, it's regardless of where the symptom comes from, whether your brain's using something that you value or fear or not, we treat them all the same regardless. So after watching this video, please do not go on a goose hunt trying to figure out what fear is deep in your brain and why your brain decided to choose whatever symptom or fear you're experiencing right now. It doesn't matter. We treat them all the same. But this is just good information to have so that you are smarter than anxiety. You are smarter than TMS. You are smarter than OCD. Because we have to outsmart these things. I have a saying called outwit, outweight, outlast. Right? So, I mean, I'm sorry. Something like that. I don't know. But we got to outwit these things. And we have to be smarter than the disorder so that we do not get pulled into the disorder. What intrigues me is the fact that the brain is incredibly good at getting our attention. And it can, and it has, for many people, used very strategic symptoms to get someone's attention. I mean, it blows my mind. And I try not to be too impressed by this sort of thing because it is a disorder, it is a negative thing. And I don't want to be so impressed or bewildered by a defense mechanism that is easily dismantled if we just do not engage with these things. But it's incredibly fascinating. And in my own journey, when I would recover from one symptom and get another symptom, I can look back and really see that a lot of these symptoms were in areas that I cared about. And I care about a lot of things, and I have strong values. So there was lots of things for my brain to play with. And in my own, after TMS, I had experiences with OCD, and I would see that same kind of pattern play out where my brain would want me to obsess about certain things and give me certain intrusive thoughts about certain topics. I would not engage with that, and then it would switch to something else. So it begs the question, like, what is the brain's motive for this? Why would it keep switching? Why would you get over one symptom to get another one, right? If you practice non-engagement, if you're not doing the 5Fs, why would it do this? We have theories, and the one theory that sticks out to me the most is the simple idea that the brain has become addicted to fear and obsession. And it's no longer about specific fears anymore. And this is the gold of having this information. If we can understand the brain's motive, right, we can more effectively create a treatment plan. And like I said, the treatment plan is to just ignore these things and to not engage with these things, right? But this also should make you feel more comfortable to not engage with these things, right? Because you'll start to realize, whoa, this isn't even about a specific fear anymore. I thought this was about a specific fear. I thought this was about a specific symptom. And now my brain's throwing everything in the kitchen sink at me. This is about fear. This is about anxiety. And this is about the brain's desire for control. The brain's desire for control. And underneath that desire for control is the fear of loss, the fear of rejection, the fear of death, the fear of all kinds of things, right? And, you know, to the brain, the fear of loss and the fear of rejection are almost the same thing, right? The fear of rejection and loss and the fear of death, they're pretty much the same thing to the brain. All fears are pretty much the same thing to the brain, which is threat, a life-threatening danger. The brain's job is to keep you safe, not to keep you happy, not to keep you symptom-free, whatever, right? So a brain that has a very strong desire for control, a very strong desire to prevent loss, to prevent death, to prevent ill health, to prevent all these things that you value. The opposite of those things are life, right? Good health, right? Good relationships and strong attachments to others and connection. But for a brain that is afraid of the opposite of those, loss, death, abandonment, separation, it does what it can to gain some control. Even if that means that you're anxious 24/7, even if it means that you're constantly on guard, even if it means that you're analyzing if you're in a relationship, you're analyzing every single move that your partner's doing because you want to maintain that sense of control so you can, quote unquote, prevent loss, even though you don't, right? There's things in life that we don't have full control over, and we need to release control over those things. But to a brain that wants to prevent this pain from happening, it does what it can to get you to take more control over that, even if it means you're anxious, right? And this is how we get into the disorders of TMS, the disorders of OCD, anxiety. It's a control thing. At the root of it, it's a control thing and a fear thing. And the specifics don't even matter that much because, as we see, right, you get over one fear, you get over one symptom, your brain's going to give you another one. We see this with health anxiety, right? It's a vicious cycle of health anxiety where a person will have one fear of an illness and then get over that one. Just for another the brain is going to throw a different symptom at that person, right? And that keeps happening until the person finally realizes that this health anxiety was never about one specific illness fear. It was not about a specific fear of cancer or ALS or whatever, right? It was about just fear of ill health, just fear in general, and wanting control over these things and to prevent ill health. But as we see with these disorders, as we see with TMS, this desire for control only creates more suffering and more loss of control. So in Eckhart Tolle's book, Power of Now, he says, I'm paraphrasing here, but the brain does all these things to prevent pain, right? To try and prevent pain and control outcomes. But all it can do is create more pain. All it does is make things even worse. It makes things more out of control. Steve Ozanich in his book talks about the desire for all control leads to the loss of all control. Great quote. So, with this information, we can see that this is not about a specific fear or a specific symptom or about a certain thing. It's about fear and control in the brain. And in some sick, twisted way, Joe Dispenza talks about this, And Eckhart Tolle talks about this in his book. In some sick, twisted way, it's as if the brain is addicted to suffering and stress and anxiety, the stress chemicals. And in my own personal journey, breaking certain obsessions, it really did feel like a withdrawal. It really did feel like I was quitting a drug. I've never done hard drugs before. I've been addicted to a substance. But I would imagine that it's somewhat what it feels like. I mean, I had catastrophizing. I have a story of when I first started catastrophizing years ago. And I kid you not, I had a massive headache for like 3 days after I quit catastrophizing. And for those of you who don't know, catastrophizing just means like worrying about the worst case scenario and like constantly playing that over and over in your head, the worst case scenario about a fear that you have. And I would do that a lot. And when I decided to stop, I literally had a headache for like 3 days, brain fog. Like it felt like I just was coming off of a drug. So whether it's an actual physical addiction that your brain has to stress chemicals, which is a highly plausible theory, I think it holds a lot of weight, or it's just the brain clinging on to fear, and it's not physiological or chemical, but it's just a purely psychological thing. It seems to be as if the brain has some sort of addiction to pain and suffering and fear and rumination and all these like terrible habits that create suffering. So what do we do about that? We have to break that addiction, right? So once we understand that, hey, this is not a specific fear thing, this will keep popping up in every area of my life that I care about. Or if you're somebody who has like some somatic symptoms that keep bouncing around, or health fears that keep bouncing around that come with symptoms, we have to break the cycle by not feeding the brain what it wants, which is it wants you to worry, it wants you to ruminate, it wants you to obsess, it wants your attention, right? Steve Ozanich talks a lot about paying attention. The body, the goal of a TMS symptom is to grab your attention. So we have to starve attention so that the brain can learn this is not how you get what you want. And this, if we do this, this sweeps the legs right out of under the disorder. From the bottom, you're taking the foundation away, right? And if we want to talk about secondary gain, which for those of you who don't know what that is, secondary gain is the idea that the brain is using this pain to kind of get what it wants, whether it's attention from a loved one or love or sympathy or empathy, right? And the brain's going to use this disorder or a symptom or an illness to get that. This even treats that, because if you're going to teach your brain, if you're not giving this attention, if you're not paying this concern, you're going to teach your brain that this is not how you get attention. This is not how you do it. So if you're on this recovery journey and you're finding that your symptoms keep switching and your obsessions keep switching, if you have OCD and anxiety and it's more psychological based fears, and it keeps switching and switching, it's your brain trying to grab your attention. Why? Like I said, it's addicted to control. Your brain is addicted to control. Your brain is addicted to fear and suffering and the control and the benefits that it gets from that. See, that, like I said, it doesn't care if you're in fear or if you're suffering. It cares about control. It cares about keeping you safe. So who gives a fuck, in the brain's point of view, who gives a fuck if you have symptoms or if you're suffering or you're in pain or you're miserable? If it feels that level of control, to the brain, it's worth it. To the brain, it's worth that trade-off. To the brain, the control is worth the trade-off of suffering. Now you, the conscious you, who's experiencing all this, you have a choice. You have a choice to feed that habit of your brain, that compulsive desire for control, or to starve it. And it's time for you, if you're watching this video, to keep starving it. Do not fall for the trick. If you're on your recovery journey, do not fall for the symptom imperative. And if you have OCD, do not fall for switching themes. Right? You're not the only one. This is so common. It's documented and it's studied, and it's proven over and over again that this is what the brain does. This is what the brain does, right? We have what we call extinction bursts, which is a known principle in psychology, that before something, a psychological habit or behavior decides to weaken and soften, it gets stronger at first. So of course the brain is going to try and throw something else at you to get you into the cycle of fear, right? For years, if you've had TMS or anxiety or OCD for years, your brain is used to a certain level of control. Your brain is used to a certain level of fight or flight chemicals. And when it's no longer getting those things, it's going to try and find ways to get those things. The same way that when a drug addict can't get his drugs, he will find different avenues and try and find different ways and get very creative to get his fix. All right, drug addicts find ways to get their drugs. They will scrap up money. They will do certain things to get their drugs, right? And in the same way, the unconscious part of your brain will be creative, will come up with certain things. And the more intelligent you are as a person, and the more intelligent your brain is, the higher IQ you have, the more creative you are, the more creative your subconscious is to come up with all these different ideas and fears and symptoms to get your attention. And it's going to try and use the things that you value the most. Like I said, the things that you fear the most. And those things are two separate sides of the same coin. What you value the most, you also fear to lose those things the most. What you value the most, you have desire to control those aspects of your life the most. So our job is to let go of that control when those fears come, when those new symptoms come. We don't let them get us back into the fear thinking cycle. We don't let that get our attention, right? Because attention to your brain is control, right? But we can't control symptoms, fears, thoughts, emotions. So we're doing a type of labor that is unproductive and causes even more suffering. So I hope you guys like this video. Comment, like, and I'll have more long form videos coming soon.